Israel.
Hey, Amelia.
Sorry, wait.
Welcome. I'll just get started connecting to YouTube.
Okay.
We might have passed each other. I did the rounds like 3 times.
What?
Yeah. I was looking for parking. I don't know how you parked ours.
I have a perfect spot.
Yeah. Also, you have a spot that you like. Okay, I see.
Secret.
I see. I'm gonna watch you go home today.
Great. Okay.
I'll tell you my secret later. Don't tell YouTube.
Oh, wait.
That's for the roll call.
Oh, yeah. Can you please do roll call?
Chair Susan Anderbaugh,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Julian Drix,
Here.
Catherine Van Amber is
Absent.
absent, Carlos Garcia Quijano is absent, Jesus Hogan,
Here.
Priscilla Dela Cruz,
Here.
Amelia Rose,
Here.
Batakumba.
Here.
We have 6 present and 2 absent. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. And really appreciate you guys all coming in today. If we could, can we also put Elder and Rob as panelists? Thank you. We are going to try and be respectful of folks' time, knowing that, well, 1, just in general, but 2, knowing that being inside is a little uncomfortable for many people this week and in general. So the noise-free PVD leaf blower ordinance, we are going to have on the January agenda. He's going to come in person in January. So we're just going to put that off. The next thing we're going to discuss is the Providence Municipal Resilience Plan report and proposed initial projects. And Leah's going to take part in this as well. And we've been pouring out, from the infrastructure bank. Sorry, my brain stopped working for a second. Leah, do you want me to provide some background on the MRP or how?
Yeah, if you want to get us started and talk about the process and the report, and then I can talk about the projects.
That sounds great. So Providence participated, and I'm going to put on my Nature Conservancy hat now. Providence participated in, which is where I work, live now, during the day. Providence participated in the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank's Municipal Resilience Program, which is also a partnership with the Nature Conservancy. And what that does is we do workshops with cities and towns across Rhode Island to help them build on the resilience and climate work that they've done before. And Kim is here from the Infrastructure Bank. She'll join in a sec. We build on a lot of the work that's come before. So some places like Providence, who've done just a ton of thinking about climate resilience and climate justice, are in a different place than some towns who haven't updated their hazard mitigation plan in 5 to 10 years. So we take all that into account and do workshops with members, with cities and towns. And the cities and towns put together a core team that's kind of like the core group thinking through this process. In Providence, it was the Sustainability Office, which was awesome. And then they invite a series of members of the public as well as municipal leaders. So folks like DPW, Parks Department, I think some city councilors were invited, but also members of the public, folks from Rhode Island Housing. April Brown was there from the RAJC, and a number of other folks. And so we had the Providence workshop in August, I believe it was August, and are just wrapping up the final report now. And some of the big themes, the ultimate goal, and a little bit stumbling here, you guys, sorry, but the ultimate goal is really to think through some concrete projects and next steps as it pertains to getting cities and towns ready for resilience. So sometimes it'll be like, we need to do this specific infrastructure project, and sometimes it'll be, we need to think about our evacuation routes. And Providence had a really interesting mix of very concrete things as well as larger issues that came up. One of the biggest issues that came up, as you guys can probably imagine, was the port, and what the fuck would you do with the port? Was basically how it came up.
The official.
The official, the report doesn't have, an F-bomb, but I didn't write it. But so there were bigger issues around how do we move the port away from fossil fuel infrastructure and toward a more sustainable future, as well as some more like concrete things around, like very specific next steps around things like our wastewater management and our stormwater management and grid infrastructure and things like that. And so the next steps from it, and I did not share the report out ahead of time, but I will send it to commission members as well as the clerk's office right after the meeting, so it can go in the minutes, and you guys can see what ended up in the report. But kind of the next step from here is that the Office of Sustainability, as the core team, works with the Infrastructure Bank, and Kim from the Infrastructure Bank is on the call, just got a hand up, oh, not anymore, to come up with an initial project that can get funded through the Infrastructure Bank. So at least one project can get funded out of that. Participating in the workshop makes you eligible for a specific pot of money from the Infrastructure Bank. The idea is also that once you go through the workshop and you come up with, kind of a list of some projects, it helps you get ready for other sources of funding as well. So it's kind of like the Infrastructure Bank helps kick you off, and then potentially you could put together other sources of funding, which is really exciting now that there are like federal funds coming down the pike and things like that. There's actual funding that you could be applying for to implement some of these things. And so I'm happy to dig into more specifics, but I know Leah wanted to talk a little bit about the two projects that they're thinking about for their proposal with the Infrastructure Bank, and then we can also turn to Kim for her thoughts after Leah. And really grateful Kim is here as well from the Infrastructure Bank. But Leah, do you want to talk through the two initial projects that you guys are thinking through?
Yeah, sure. And it might make sense for Kim to talk a little bit more about the funding, but because there are some limitations, we can't. It's not a huge amount of funding. It's around $150,000 to $200,000 project, and there is a city match requirement. So given that we have sort of our internal brainstorming come up with two proposals that I wanted to get feedback from you all on. The first is, and this I think really speaks to a lot of the feedback that we got at the workshop from community members about the need for neighborhood and community investment and like social resilience infrastructure. So this concept is to build off of some of the investments that we're already making in some of the city, a rec center or a community center. The two that we're already making investments that could be part of the match are Davy Lopes and Elmwood Community Center. And the idea would be to build off those investments and consider resilient climate resilience investments such as stormwater management, green infrastructure, perhaps solar and backup battery storage, other things to make those places very resilient to climate change. So that's one concept. Again, pretty responsive to what is in the report. The other is some projects that the Parks Department has been working with partners on for a while to try to get some funding to improve the water quality at Mashpog Pond. They have, they can know what needs to happen there, so this funding could help address the inflow. It would basically be a project that would help clean the water as it comes into Mashpog Pond and the rest of the Roger Williams Park ponds from Spectacle Pond, which is in Cranston. So they've identified that as the major source of pollutants coming into the ponds throughout the park. And so this would be to make an investment to do monitoring there and to also filter the water that's coming in to address the water quality issues throughout the ponds. So two exciting projects. Probably wouldn't, well, I would love to, we're going to talk to Kim more about if it makes sense to put into. We definitely want to have one as a clear priority and then perhaps have another application in there in case there's additional funding available.
Awesome, thank you, Leah. Kim, is there anything, can you raise your hand if there's anything you'd like to add? Oh, great. Can we let Kim speak, please? Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Kim, can you hear us? Hi, welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So glad to be joining you all. Yeah, I can definitely add a couple of things. So both of those project ideas sound fantastic. They hit on a number of the key things that we prioritize on our end. Of course, the adaptation to climate change and addressing of natural and climate-based hazards, but also that strong community benefit and the implementation of green stormwater infrastructure and nature-based solutions. Those are all things that we're trying to prioritize, and I think both of these projects really hit on that. I'll say in terms of the funding, as Leah, I know I've mentioned to you, and Sue, of course, as you know, but we do have the 7 million in funding available across municipalities who are applying for this year's action grants. We've been encouraging municipalities to target around 250,000, like Leah was saying. However, we've also been kind of following that up with if you have something really exciting that really hits on our key criteria, going up to maybe 500,000 would definitely be something to consider. The more we talk to folks and hearing about the exciting projects out there, particularly some of these bigger projects that are very exciting, we want to encourage people to apply, given we have this larger pot of money available. So my only questions regarding the two projects would be kind of target numbers, and that might help drive how you want to stagger the applications. I would say personally, out of the two, the focus on the community centers seems like that would have such a wide-ranging impact. But you ultimately know the individual areas better than I do. But yeah, I think the strong potential for community benefit with that first project idea sounds like a really strong contribution, strong idea.
Do any members of the commission have questions for Leah or thoughts on the two different proposals? I think she's hoping we could use this time, and Leah jump in whenever, but to kind of like think through the two different proposals and provide any input or feedback that we might have or that members of the public might have.
I guess my initial question about the community centers, I agree that sounds good. I've also heard people talk about Elmwood Community Center in particular is needing some like just basic repairs. That's one of my questions, I guess, is like spending money on resiliency things, is that gonna really meet the need of the community center in terms of just like basic, and I don't know what needs to be done. But like, how to do that. And
so Amelia, this would be on top of basic repairs that are already going to be happening. So we identified those two because they're getting investments and that can serve as the match. So totally hear you on that.
Okay.
The facilities are functional and meeting the basic needs as we kind of build off of that. And Davy Lopes also might be getting, Davy Lopes in particular will probably be getting significant investments. It's one of the spaces that the city's exploring for potential pre-K site, so that would get state funding.
Okay, well that's great. I think with Mashpug Ponds, that's another good one, but I feel like there are a lot of other funding opportunities for stormwater projects there. But not that it's not worth putting that into a proposal for this infrastructure bank thing.
I guess I have questions over the Davy Lopes and the Elmwood Community Centers. The idea also that like if they have these other resiliency investments, it would like expand the scope of what the community center does. So it could be a place people go and emerge, like when there's like a weather emergency, or like it would just expand the scope of what happens there, or it would just make it more resilient because it had solar and battery storage and things like that, or what? Did that make sense?
Sorry, you kind of trailed off at the end. Do you mind? I've heard the beginning, but can you just repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just wondering for Elmwood and Davy Lopes, is the idea that by making resiliency investments, it kind of expands the scope of what those community centers do. Like they could also be places where people go in inclement weather or in case of emergency, or is it, like, is that,
Yeah.
I guess.
So I don't think they would be officially designated as like emergency shelters. That's not the goal. The goal is to just have facilities that could be supporting the community in the event of emergency. Part of the challenge with this is we don't control their staffing, right? We can't force these places to be open in the event of a disaster or to serve the community. That's up to their management and how they run the place. But these are spaces that are heavily utilized by the community, not everyone certainly, but to have places like that, at least where some people are going, and even if it's just, charging your phone or whatever, having a place that has power or that has warmth or coolness, depending on the season, that can be really helpful. And it's not going to serve everyone, but I think, this kind of vision of supporting community spaces to have that sort of infrastructure is a really good model, whether it's churches, whether it's health centers, whether it's any community serving facility like that. The more places we can have in neighborhoods that are able to stay open, able to keep the lights on, I think the better off a community as a whole will be. But it's hard to start because, how do you pick, right? And you're not gonna. These are meant to be like small places, like sort of the opposite of an emergency shelter.
So Leah, you mentioned that that you wouldn't have the power to choose the schedule of the employees and how it could be used in a resiliency hub or in emergencies. So what, I guess, is the commitment of the administration to make sure that these investments are something that is going to benefit the community beyond just being able to charge your phone, but deeper into like the emergencies that we're focusing in on? Are there other offices that are involved? Because I know there are offices that are involved with like emergency management and other things like that. So I guess what is the commitment of the administration around these type of projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have been in conversations with Healthy Communities Office as well as Providence Emergency Management around, the concept of resilience hubs. And, we are hoping to work with the RJC to go out to bid for services to help us really hone in on where and how, more the details, so we can start to make some decisions. But I think that as I was saying before, the more places that you can have, whether they are in city control or not in city control, that have backup battery, that are supporting the community and just have good quality spaces to do the great work that they're doing, I think the better we're all, or the community as a whole will be. Moving forward with a 30% design study for PCTA, which is the largest, and Rob was going to give an update about this later, but our largest emergency shelter, to make sure that facility has battery, it has a generator as of now, but we are looking to expand the resiliency to have solar and backup battery storage to support that. So, as our primary emergency shelter, that is a priority of the administration. And we're also hoping that with that process, we will then be able to sort of scale it out to other facilities, other critical facilities and community facilities as well.
So do you anticipate being able to pull in those other offices into this proposal?
Yes, yep, definitely.
Leah, I was going.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. I was going to ask as well, and in line with this discussion, so are those facilities privately owned or are they public?
They're owned by the city.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say if they were privately owned, there might be a little bit of a conflicts there, a challenge there. But if they're
Right.
publicly owned, then that makes it a bit easier. I also did want to second as well that in terms of, I know you discussed maybe submitting both proposals, and we have had that come up in the past with municipalities where they've submitted 2 proposals and been funded for 2 proposals. So I would definitely encourage you to submit both.
Okay, thank you.
Beth, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask him, you said there might be a little bit of a challenge if they are privately owned infrastructure. Could you talk to us a little bit about if the city were to do an application with a entity that is not a city-owned infrastructure?
Yeah, happy to. So it mainly our concern is if we were to award a grant on a privately owned property and then halfway through the owner of that property decided, we don't want to do that project anymore. That's mainly what we have in our minds when we're reviewing the applications and if anything comes up that's privately owned. That being said, if there were strong support from the private entity going into it, that would definitely change things. If they had a letter in there or something along those lines. I think we mainly get concerned about like an application that's being submitted to do something on someone else's property without having consulted them. That's where it gets a little bit more concerning, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking there's so many different organizations in the city who are providing mutual aid in these times and are, staffing emergency and doing that on their own, their own volition. So I'd be interested to know if the Office of Sustainability would be interested in like talking to some of these organizations and partnering for an infrastructure project like this so that it's more community owned.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think we would just need a good kind of transparent process for, how do we select which organization to work with or whatever that sort of nature. But I would definitely be open to that. For this particular opportunity, we are looking at a February 12th, I believe, deadline to get in our application. So, we'd have to really those conversations quickly. I also just know that because this is very new to us, this whole doing these types of battery storage projects, I feel like initially I'd be more comfortable doing that on a city building and making sure that we really understand how these processes work. But I do think that long term that that is absolutely the goal. We want to be able to provide technical assistance, find funding, and help these essential community facilities have that type of resilience.
Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah.
This is Julian. I think just wanted to voice that I think both projects sound really good. I think the rec center one is probably more of a priority and really important. I'm just thinking about infrastructure rec centers in general and how important they are to the community. Like when the pool got closed at Davy Lopes, what an impact that had on many levels in the community. And so anything to kind of help keep them open, add on to other investments that are being made to improve the rec centers, and even just in terms of the places that already have such deep social networks in the community, like in a heat emergency, it's not just about kind of the availability of a building that's cool, but the networks of information to get the word out that's available for people and kind of checking in on families. That's kind of what makes those events so deadly is kind of the isolation that people feel if they're not connected in with kind of knowing where the resources are. And so working it around places that are, even if they're not official shelters, are embedded in existing kind of strong networks in the community is really important. And then the Roger one, I definitely would support both applications. I think the ponds it'd be great to be able to kind of continue improving the quality there and make it something that's, continue to be more accessible for people in the neighborhood immediately around it as an important thing. So thank you for that. I have a quick question for Kim, I think more about the program in general in terms of the qualifications that you're looking for make sense in terms of kind of scoring them and what you're looking at with it. But just wondering in terms of the overall distribution of funds across the many different municipalities, if there's any kind of thing in place around equitable distribution towards the communities that are more frontline and kind of need it the most. versus kind of like a even, equal distribution across the whole state. I mean, obviously everywhere is impacted by climate change and everyone needs it, but it seems like there's disproportionate high impacts in some communities, and so there should be disproportionately high investments in those communities too. I'm just wondering if that's factored in terms of if there's extra funds, where to support them, and whether more resources towards EJ communities in Providence is able to be supported through that.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. And you cut out at a couple moments, but I think I got the overall sense of your question, so should be good. We've actually completely revamped how we're considering equity in this new round of the applications, both for the 2022 Municipal Resilience Program and also for the action grants. Environmental justice communities have always been considered, but we really wanted to kind of like step that up a little bit, both in terms of kind of points allocated in our scoring process for the projects, and in terms of just amount of information gathered. So we really are familiar with the communities that we're giving these funds to. So as it stands currently, we have been, as we talk to municipalities, we've been kind of continually speaking to that target number of $250,000. We haven't necessarily spoken to more or less when we're speaking with these different communities, but when we do go through and score the applications, applications that have trying to think of the best way to describe how we've revamped our criteria, but we've done it in a couple different ways. One, we've put together kind of like a community needs section, which has part of the component is coming from information that we're given from the municipality, and part of the component is coming from more standardized information that we're asking the municipality to provide, so that we have a sense of that the particular location where the project is going to be installed. And then the secondary portion that we have included in the application is as kind of a need or equity factor, is the resources that the community had to put together this proposal. We also, we recognize on that side of things that sometimes we get really stellar proposals from municipalities that have a lot more funding to hire a consultant to put together that proposal, versus sometimes we get proposals that are for much more needed projects that aren't necessarily as cleanly put together, if that makes sense. So in those kind of two ways, we're trying to make sure that we're really getting a grasp of these projects that are coming in and the background behind them and the need that's there, so that we can allocate the funding we have appropriately. And so that will be taken into consideration with how much funding we allocate towards these different projects, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One last question for me is just if, in terms of the eligible expenses, is like education part, is that an eligible expense, or is it just for infrastructure, built like equipment and building things?
Yeah, happy to answer that. So all the projects have to be some sort of construction or built project, but there is an engagement and education component, which of course I know those are separate things, but we do in the application process encourage municipalities to talk about, one, how they're going to engage local community, and two, if there are any education opportunities or components. So we have that as a scoring criteria within our action grant applications. So that is taken into consideration and often ends up being a part of the projects that are installed.
I think that would be important,
Yeah.
especially with the community centers.
And Leah, if we can be helpful in any way as you're working on the proposals, like if you need a letter from the commission or anything like that, I think we'd be down for that.
I think the
Thank
discussion
you.
is great, and I like that. I like to hear that we can do both. I think if we can support the Office of Sustainability to submit both proposals would be great. In terms of the community center, I really love the vision of like having one project that shows the community like what a resiliency hub is. And then also I think to Vadek's point, I love that idea of working like with private building owners. So being able to show them like, this is like all the benefits that are coming back to the community. I think it could be really strong to have something Oh, actually, a question that is coming back to mind as I'm talking and thinking out loud is, what is the timeline for completion of these projects?
My understanding is that the infrastructure bank is looking for projects that can be completed within a year-ish.
Yeah, I can follow up. So the grants are usually awarded, and for this round would be awarded early 2022, figure about March or so. Oh my gosh, excuse me, figure on March. And those projects would have to be wrapped up December of 2023.
And the thing I really like building on what Priscilla was saying is like these could almost be like not demonstration projects, but kind of pilots for how it could then be done in other neighborhoods or with other types of buildings. So as other funding becomes available, if there's like a nonprofit or like a community group who wants to do something similar, like the city's kind of like proven out a little bit of how to do it, and maybe can help them apply for funding from other sources or future sources.
Yeah, and I guess just I would love to circle back with Vatic, and given your comment earlier, does that resonate with you, or would you still prefer to see the city engage with private partners at this point?
What I'm concerned about, like, I like the idea of a resiliency hub, and I think that in an ideal space, the outcomes that you talked about would be happening. But there is a way in how, if you don't have the staff that have the education about certain things. So I just got back from a trip to Puerto Rico, and we were able to go to this place called Casa Pueblo. And so it was like started from like this uprising against having a mining town and like blowing up the mountains out there. And so they have a resiliency hub, which is also connected to like a radio station and a theater, but they have solar panels on their facility. And so during the storm, they're able to like, people can come there and have their insulin and get their insulin and things like this. They also have, all their solar panels are connected to other houses that are around them, right? There's over 100 businesses that have solar panels that act as resiliency hubs throughout the community, right? And so like I like the idea of that. However, in reality, like Julian was just talking about, they tried to close the pool, right? So whoever was sitting in a room at one point was like, we need to build a community pool. And then down the line, people are like, we're gonna get rid of it. So if they're gonna be solar panels on this building, how do we make sure that the community gets to benefit from it? How do we make sure that it is a seed that is spreading to the community in that resiliency? So like that's what my concern is, and I understand what you were saying around like the timeline. I agree with you. I don't think at this point that that is realistic to say that you're going to get a community partner by February 13th or something like that. So I will follow my colleagues in supporting where you're at. I'm just raising that concern, especially since we know historically things like this, you can have good intentions, but it doesn't always pan out.
Yeah, thank you, Vatic. I really appreciate that comment. What a cool example to get to see firsthand. So thanks for sharing that. And I think we should make it, we still have some grant funding connected to resilience hubs. So we should focus that process really on finding those partners. What are the key spots in the communities? Who are the which facilities could serve as those hubs and those seeds in the community to start that same sort of process. So it's not one or the other.
Leah, I wanted to add as well, on kind of the hind end of this, the kind of signing the grant agreement after a grant has been awarded. There's some additional information we kind of work with grantees to provide and put together. And part of that is kind of like a 5-year management. How is this going to look in the years going forward? And maybe the thing to do, if you go forward with this proposal and this is awarded, would be to work together on that portion to ensure continuation of the benefits that are going to be provided through this project for the larger community. Make sure that this is going to continue, if that makes sense.
That's great. Awesome. Should we just roll straight then into the updates from your office, Leah?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. So the first update is that some of you may have already heard, but after almost 7 years of working with you all and serving the city, my last day with the city is going to be January 7th. So I'm leaving my position. Very bittersweet. I'm not going far. I'm staying here in Providence, but I did accept a new job with Northeastern University. So I'll be commuting up there a couple days a week. But I'm really looking forward to continuing to support this work from the outside and hopefully working with you all in various ways going forward. We are posting the job description shortly. It'll probably be posted tomorrow or the day after. And if you know anyone who is interested, please encourage them to apply. It's a great job. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested. And yeah, it will be, very, I will miss you guys. I will miss this work. It's been an incredible journey working with you all. And I've learned so much and grown so much from each and every one of you, and will forever be indebted to all that I've learned and that you've shared. So thank you so much. And yeah, like I said, I'm really gonna miss you all.
We're gonna miss you too.
Yeah, it's definitely bittersweet. Excited for you.
Yes, keep living. Go keep living. Don't stop. Just keep going.
No,
And it comes with changes. So like, go ahead.
Thanks,
we'll keep
Jesus.
we'll keep an open seat on the commission for you.
Always,
All right.
always come sit with us.
Can someone snag my little nameplate thing in the meeting?
Paper nameplate.
Keep that going.
And I think it's just remarkable everything that you've accomplished while being at the city, Leah, and how you built out the team and the work and vision and working with the RJC and the Providence Climate Justice Plan. So thank you for all of that. You've given so much to the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla.
Yeah, it's a real thank you for that's just there's a lot that's built and there's a lot of plans that are in place about all the things to come. And I don't know, to me it's like if things are as robust as we hope and think and see them to be, it should never be dependent on any one person to make them happen. It's got to always be deeper than that. And so I think it's a test for everyone else to make sure that this work gets carried forward and you can kind of pass that baton and tap in, tap out, and the work will go on. But thank you for all you've done to kind of carry it this far and get it to this point. It's you're leaving the city better off than when you started.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you.
I've already told you all the things I think about you and how positive they are, so I want to bear you here, but I don't know if this is what you envisioned when you started, but you've done so much more. And yeah, I'm proud to live in the city because of all that you've done.
Thank you, Sue. All right, well, let's move on. All right. We have some other updates. I still have 2-3 weeks of work here. So lots more to do. I lost my notes here. Okay, other updates. Today actually is the first day that there's a new community compost site. Thank you to Groundwork and to Harvest Cycle over at Mount Pleasant Library, and sort of carrying out our residential composting plan to help establish more of these sites all over the city so residents can drop off food scraps, and we can keep diverting organic waste from the landfill and get that carbon back in the ground. So thank you, Lily and her team. As you can see by my background, we're also still celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And last week, I believe many of you got the email I shared, a mini RFP for, we're asking for someone to help make a sort of video or like a story map, something to tell the story of how our office was created, and how it's evolved and how it's changed over the past 10 years, how the work has evolved, and hopefully kind of interview probably many of you to get insights into folks who have been a part of this effort over the past 10 years, and then also capture some of what we're hearing for what is next, like what's on the horizon for the next 10 years for this work. So any help getting the word out about that, we would love. We'd love your help with that. It's I think it's $4,750 is what we have budgeted for it. And we're hoping that maybe one day we'll all be able to get together safely and celebrate the work and just gather and be together. Maybe in the spring at some point. But for now, trying to get that the word out, and bids are due to Emily and I on the 7th. So let me know if you have any questions about that. And then 2 other quick updates. We've made some really exciting progress on our electric vehicle fleet. We're in the process of procuring 15 vehicles. Many of them have already been procured, so we already have them. And the safety garage has done a really nice job putting like decals on the new vehicles that show that they're electric and that the city is making this transition, and the parking spots are like painted green and say EV charging. So very proud of these new electric vehicles, and it's really a growing part of our fleet. So it's exciting to see the city move in that direction. And then we are also working on Public Street, a conceptual design. We'll be going out to bid in the next month or 2, but we're working internally on getting everything in order to move that forward. We've been working with our former artist in residency, Fatima, who has been doing some light engagement, and she'll be kind of compiling all her information and research about the history of the site, the sort of design constraints of the site, and some of the public engagement that has already been done, sort of synthesizing what the needs are. There will be certainly more public engagement that the designer will certainly embark on, but we are moving forward with some initial designs for that site. And initially it's going to be quite limited to the street and the end of the right of way there. We don't have ownership of any other parcels near there for the time being, but we want to start making at least some progress to make investments in that site so it can actually be a nice public space for people to go to sooner rather than later. And I believe Rob has a few other updates to share. I'll turn it over.
Hello, everyone. Two energy related projects to update you on. First, as Leah mentioned earlier, we have been focused on trying to develop a microgrid solar storage at PCTA because it serves so many community needs and it's such a central part of our emergency preparedness. And it's an ideal facility for a large solar storage project. And I'm pleased to say that we'll be sending out an RFP for an engineering study in early January. And we also have a community partner who's going to be helping to fund a buyer's agent for the project. So that's moving forward. And, I think, we can, as Leah mentioned, we can learn a lot from this. In my opinion, it's really critical that the city have as many resilience facilities as possible, in the long run. You know, if you look at what happened in Austin last year with the winter storm, when there was a loss of power for days, and residents around the city were having trouble getting clean water and electric power and heat to survive. You know, that kind of you know, circumstance could certainly occur here. You know, there's nothing that says it couldn't. So it's incumbent on the city, and it's incumbent on all of us to really try and prioritize resilience. The other update I wanted to give is related to schools. We've been working with the school department, the state, and other parties to advance lighting projects, and I think we're on the cusp of awarding the first one for 3 school buildings that will install LED lighting with controls, and there's also, I think, a commitment that we expect to get to fund all lighting projects across the entire school portfolio. So investments in our public school infrastructure is important. And you know, light actually has an amazing impact in terms of health and wellness. So I think these benefits can make a big difference even beyond the energy savings. So happy to answer any questions on those updates.
Any questions or comments?
No, sounds good.
Great update. That's awesome. Oh, and you guys awarded the first energy challenge to JWU. That was you,
That's
Rob,
right. That's actually a good update as well. Thanks for bringing that up, Sid.
I got you.
So if you can see on our Repower PVD website, which you can get to through the sustainability webpage, we issued our report for 2019 and 2020, and we also issued an award for the academic center, the JWU building, that achieved a 45% savings over its 2015 baseline. So they did some incredible work. But I've also seen across the portfolio, you know, some good performance. So I think we're going to be issuing more awards in the near future for next year. We've also had some other property owners reach out to us with interest in joining the campaign. So I hope to have news about new participants to announce in the near future as well.
That's awesome. 45%, that's crazy. Any other updates, Emily, or no pressure? Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, is that, Leah, are there any other updates?
No, that's it.
I mean, that's a lot. I wasn't expecting any more, but I just didn't want to cut you off. Okay, cool. Let's go to our next thing, which is the organizational meeting section where we elect a new chairperson and vice chairperson. I think we do the chairperson first, then the vice chairperson. Okay, cool. Okay, so I have a little script because the clerks are the best, and otherwise I wouldn't know what to do. Can I please have a nomination to elect a chairperson for the Sustainability Commission?
Who's running? Oh, Julie. I nominate Julian Rodriguez-Drake.
Excellent. Do we have a second? Second. Awesome. Are there any further nominations? I have to ask this 3 times, so don't think I'm just being weird. Are there any further nominations?
So are you sure?
Are there any further nominations? Okay, there being no further nominations, the city clerk is hereby directed to cast one ballot for, one ballot for Julian Driggs as chairperson of the Sustainability Commission. Do we then vote?
So wait, you just made a motion to vote, and now you gotta make a motion to vote Julian on? Is that it?
Is that what we're doing?
You made a
Did I misread
motion
this?
to elect someone as the chair.
Yes.
So now you're gonna say all those in favor, because you had a motion and you had a second.
We have
So
motion
now
and
it's all those in favor.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Any opposed?
Anyone opposed? Did Did anyone abstain?
It was just like,
Seeing that there were no abstentions and no votes, and being no further nominations, is that when I read this last part?
So you've nominated him,
Yeah,
and the
we
motion
nominated.
passes, so now he becomes the chair.
Yes, okay.
Wow.
yeah. The guy.
Okay.
The
Take it away, Chairman.
Now he needs the script.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah. Set him up.
Very first thing.
So now we have to nominate a vice chairperson.
Trial by fire.
And
I'll
the
tell you
next-
the next script is.
Okay. So can I do a motion first and then do the nomination?
So first you ask for a nomination, and then, can I have a nomination, and then you make a
Okay.
motion to have a person, is what my understanding is.
Okay, so can I have a nomination to elect a vice chairperson of the Sustainability Commission, given the vacancy there? Yeah, right?
Jesus, are you?
I make a motion to vote. Do we say the
nominate.
person?
Yeah.
To nominate Baddock as the vice chairperson.
I second that nomination.
Great.
So a motion from Jesus, a second from Sue. All right.
Now you passed 3 times.
So are there any further nominations for vice chairperson of the Sustainability Commission? No. Second time. Are there any further nominations for vice chairperson? No. Okay. Third time. Are there any further nominations for vice chairperson? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. There being no further nominations, the city clerk is hereby directed to cast one ballot for Vada Kumba as vice chairperson of the Sustainability Commission.
Now do we all vote?
All those,
Right.
All those in
Okay,
favor?
all moved?
All
Aye.
those in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
any opposed?
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, so moved, right?
Motion carries.
All right.
There you go. Official.
Hey, friends, this is so exciting.
God, it's like giving me PTSD from when I was there.
Cool.
Thank
so
you
now
and congratulations, Sue.
Thank you.
Yes.
A meeting of many congratulations. Who've been carrying this work for so long and passing the torches. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Woo.
thank you.
Okay.
No one congratulated you. Just the people leaving.
That's gonna be so great. I'm so excited. And I already
Thank you for your
told
volunteer work.
Thank you for your service.
Julian that I have like all the emails from the folks who've signed up to get the regular emails about what these meetings are and stuff. So I'll send that to you guys. And I'm happy to chat anytime. However, I can be helpful with any position I am here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
Next.
So with that,
Wow.
item number 5, we are going to public comment. Do any members of the public who are still here want to share any updates, questions, or discussion items?
Raise your hand.
Yes, raise your hand on Zoom. All
Okay.
right. Hearing none. Are we doing executive session?
Yeah, I guess that was a question I had, but maybe that now you have. If folks
Okay.
want to, we had 3 people apply to the open seats for the commission. Right now we have 1 open seat, but I know I'm cycling off soon as a total member because of the 6th year. Can you guys hear me? We haven't gotten into executive yet. Okay. Yeah, we're just talking about it. The ordinance said that every 6 years you cycle off, so I will be cycling off in early 2022. Also, like, conflict of interest, like, I should cycle off. So we'll have 2 seats soon, but we have 1 now, we have 3 applicants. So if folks wanted to stay, I know some folks were uncomfortable being inside right now, but if folks wanted to talk about those 3, I did email you their, an Excel with their applications earlier today.
So I guess before entertaining a motion about that, I would like to just hear discussion on whether people are interested in continuing. I think we were scheduled from 4 to 5:30, so we stayed for our scheduled time. We have another 19 minutes to be able to go into that, and would need a quorum for making any votes or decisions. So how are people feeling about doing an executive session and at least starting a discussion today?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I would say
There's
that
not
the,
a 5:30 meeting here, so we have to be like 5 minutes early.
Yeah, well, at least 10, so that we don't know I'm sitting up there. Have to
Okay, so we have 9 minutes.
All right, so.
Which might be
we should-
enough, yeah,
All
depending on.
right, so we can start it. We might not get to conclusions or anything, but we can
Okay.
start it and actually do that in executive session. So in the meeting now with doors open. So can I have a motion to go into executive session?
I make the motion to go into executive session.
Okay.
I'll
So-
second. Oh, Amelia seconded.
What does it mean to say must read Rhode Island general laws into the record?
Oh, yeah, you have to read,
Oh, here we go.
yeah.
So discussion relative to the election of new members, the
So it's
sustainability.
Priscilla, you made the
Priscilla, go
motion,
ahead.
so you're gonna read the Rhode Island general
You
law.
can
Priscilla
motion
too.
to
this is
say.
like a play.
Table read.
Yeah.
So we've made the motion to go into executive session, which means
Pursuant.
discussion,
Pursuant to Rhode Island general law.
pursuant to Rhode Island general law. Do I have to read that?
Yeah,
42-46-4 and Rhode Island general law 42-46-5A1. Done.
Do
I
we
second
have
that
a
whole
second?
motion.
Okay, so second from Sue, on a roll call vote.
Okay, so Chair Julian Drix
Approve.
and Vice Chair Batakumba,
Yes.
okay? Susan Angelbois,
Yes.
Catherine Van Amberg is absent, Carlos Garcia Quijano is absent.
So does that Carlos join as an attendee?
Priscilla,
But he's on Zoom, so he's not
So
counted.
he can watch the general meeting, but he can't vote and stuff, yeah.
Priscilla De La Cruz,
Here.
and Amelia Rose.
Here.
So we have 6 ayes, 2 absent, and we are in executive session. So we're gonna shut the machine off, close the doors.
So we're gonna end this meeting now because we're going into executive session.
Oh, that's that.
Yeah, it means you're like private, so
Okay.
since we're
I
talking
was like,
about.
what are
Talking
we
about
doing?
people.
Oh, yeah,
We're
she
voting
didn't say
to-
that. Since we're talking about individuals who've applied.